Welcome back, everyone. I'm Akash Joshi. I'm the Operations Research Guru, and today we're going to be talking about when to use linear programming, integer programming, and nonlinear programming. Because there are so many different types of programming, there's also nonlinear integer programming, which is a bit more advanced, but these are the main three types. But because there are so many types of programming, it can be kind of confusing it can be kind of confusing to decide which ones to use. So here's a video explaining which ones to use and which scenarios that are specific to your problem. First, let's talk about linear programming. This is probably the most simple one. First of all, there are no nonlinear parts such as x squared, square root of x, cosine of x. Keep in mind that summation formulas are fine. That does not make a program nonlinear. Summation formulas are just a way of compacting formulations. So never use, when there are nonlinear parts of the equation or formulation, never use linear programming. You want to use linear programming when all the variables are continuous and they don't have to be integers. And some specific examples of when you might want to use linear programming are allocation problems. You are allocating resources, there are resource constraints, there are limited resources, and you need to use those resources to produce something, and the two products that you produce have different costs and require different amounts of resources and different profits that you get from them. There's also budgeting allocation, which is similar to the resource allocation problems, except the budget is just money, so the resource is money, and there are different places that you can invest that money in order to get higher investments, higher return on your investments. Scheduling can also be a linear program. However, scheduling can also be integer programming. So it can get kind of confusing on when to use what kind of programming for scheduling. And production planning is also another example of when to use linear programming. Next, let's talk about integer programming. Integer program is also pretty simple. Whenever there are binary variables 0 or 1, x1 is 0, x is either 0 or 1, then you want to use integer programming. And you might be asking, when do you want to use binary variables? Whenever you want to not include a variable, that's when you want to use binary variables. For example, if you want to make a variable zeros to not include it in the formulation because of a specific condition that happened, then you want to use binary variables. Um, if you desire integer answers only, you might want to use integer programming. Some specific examples include transportation, the facility location, which I made a very lengthy video on that, and it got over 140 views, so I believe I did pretty well on that video, so go check that out. Scheduling, like I mentioned before, is also an example of integer programming. And selection, when you are selecting what to bring on a trip, you might use binary variables, because if you set a binary variable to 0, then that means you wouldn't be bringing it on the trip. I made a video on mathematical modeling, and that talked about the knapsack problem. So if you're more interested in integer programming, please go check that out. Finally, I'm going to talk about when to use nonlinear programming. This is obviously when you have nonlinear equations. This is like always true. Whenever you have a nonlinear equation, you are always going to use nonlinear programming no matter what. Some other things for nonlinear programming are balancing problems whenever you're trying to find a balance between two things. For example, there's pricing. So if you have a product and you want to decide how to price that product, you want to make a profit, but you don't want to make the product too expensive so that people don't buy it. So you want to balance demand and price. The higher the price, the lower the demand, but you also get more profit. But the lower the price, the higher the demand, because more people are going to want to buy your product since it's cheaper, and you might actually make more profit by lowering the price in the long run. So nonlinear programming can help you find the right balance. Yeah. Another example of nonlinear programming is inventory management. So do you want to buy in bulk to reduce the unit cost? But if you buy in bulk, there may be high delivery fees. You might want to find a balance between how many units to buy. Also, for inventory management, you might want to balance the ordering cost and the inventory cost. The inventory cost is the cost needed to maintain the product to keep it working while it sits in a warehouse. And the ordering cost is how much it costs to buy the product. That factors in buying in bulk and delivery fees. Also, portfolio optimization. If you are interested in finance, nonlinear programming is right for you. Nonlinear program portfolio optimization includes budget allocation, which is typically linear, but if you want to calculate linear programs or budget allocation problems with risk, which is very important in the stock market, you might want to use nonlinear programs instead, and instead of maximizing profits, try to minimize risk. That is part of the portfolio optimization problem. And finally, the last example for nonlinear program is economies of scale. So as production increases, cost per unit is also going to decrease. And as production, if you have less production, then the cost is going to be high. So the more you spend on production, the cheaper it is to create your product, which can give you more profits. But also, if you spend less on production, then the cost per unit is way higher. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you for watching. I'm Akash Joshi. Goodbye.